Let's talk about talking. Talking is one of the most fundamental skills, not only for life in general, but for making games. It certainly comes up. Talking comes up in how we ask for help, and how we share the work that we're doing, and how we collaborate with others. It's just a really fundamental skill. And in particular, there's a pattern that many game developer people, for various possible reasons we could speculate, tend to fall into that is counterproductive. Doesn't serve them well, limits their progress, so let's attack and address what that is. Now, it's something that I found was very usefully summarized to me by one of my early mentors when he explained, Chris, the resistance that you're encountering isn't because of what you're saying, it's because of how you're saying it. Let's do it again. The resistance I was encountering, this is me trying to speak to a group or to someone else or whatever it was, is not because of what you're saying, it's because of how you're saying it. And this sort of threw me off because I was so used to thinking about communication, and maybe this is just because a lot of us who make games come from a technical mindset or comfort with computers, a lot of time on computers, thinking about communication kind of like when we're typing messages in a chat, right? Where I figure out what the words are I want to communicate, I send those across, I wait and receive, interpret their words, and repeat. And as simple or as mechanical as that sounds, there's all kinds of cues I wasn't paying attention to. My facial expression, my tone of voice, my just presence in terms of how I was presenting the point. And there's a lot of different ways you can ask or share the same information in a way that might lead someone to feel like they're being put on the defensive, as opposed to being welcomed to take part in something positive, even if it's the same message. This is something that takes a lot of practice to get over. It takes a little bit of humility to recognize in ourselves, but I can guarantee you, very common among people that I've met, especially among computer science people, programmer people, people who spend a lot of time playing and developing video games. It's a very common trait. It can come across to people who are outside of the kind of software engineering mindset as kind of abrasive, a little bit frank, a little bit abrupt. And it actually sometimes manifests itself as well in something where you'll have a group of people sitting around, potentially programmers, potentially just people who are working on a game together, and they are agreeing on something. They're in agreement, but it comes across as though they're arguing. It comes across, they begin to feel like they are taking opposite sides. Again, not because of what's being said, but because of how it's being said. And without even trying to offer any one-size-fits-all silver bullet to this, and I don't think that it's quite that simple. It'd be nice if it was. It really is a practice thing, but it begins from self-awareness of noticing, is that what's going on? Am I coming across as combative? Am I coming across as too matter-of-fact? Am I coming across as too certain? Benjamin Franklin, in his autobiography, actually mentioned that as one of his speech patterns, he focused on sounding less certain of something, unless it really was something that he understood, was absolutely certain, that even just approaching things from I think, I feel, to the best that I can tell, to contextualize things as, maybe it sounds redundant, but to admit that from the perspective he has, this is how it appears to be. Or from his own knowledge, this is what he's seeing. And it can sound a little wishy-washy, it can sound like it's diluting, and maybe there's a time and place where that's not always the only way to communicate, but for a lot of standard interactions where there is, in fact, a lot of information being thrown around, considerations that might be outside of our vision, factors that we may not have thought about to account for, etc., it can just be very useful to come at engaging in conversation from that kind of tentative standpoint. From one of, I'm here to bring to it my part, but I acknowledge and respect others are bringing their parts, and that it's not just a, here's what I've built, knock down parts of it, that sort of combative approach. And I think sometimes it comes from either an engineering mindset. In some cases, maybe even we might rationalize it as saying it's part of a healthy scientific method or even debate. That we come from communities that respect and value the idea of trying to just stand up and knock down arguments. But that when we take that sort of mentality and tone and pattern to our speech, it becomes really unproductive because it pushes others away. It limits our ability to make our point. And often it'll just leave us isolated in ways we may not even getting that feedback besides, why is it so hard to work with people? Or why is this not working out for me? Sometimes it's because we're coming across as argumentative when we don't at all mean to be. And so, like I say, it begins from being self-aware of that being a possibility. that you can pay attention to in your messaging. I found for me, and this is part of why anymore I still do these frequent YouTube videos, just recording myself talking, giving a talk, making an argument, making a point, I found it's helpful for me to be able to review and watch it. And man, the first times that you record yourself talking to a camera and then watch it afterwards, you will wince a lot. You will just, ooh, don't do that. Ooh, why are you? And that's healthy. That's healthy because here's the thing. Until you're seeing that and iteratively working on trying to improve that, the various sort of things that we do as we speak, that we, when review our own speech, realize like maybe that is a little more aggressive, maybe that is a little more certain than it needs to sound. When we see that, we begin to improve upon it. But we're only fooling ourselves if we don't look at it. That's the reality, whether or not we choose to confront it, address it, and then take steps to improve it. And it's such a powerful, powerful skill to even make a little bit of improvement. If this was an RPG and we had stats, right? Famously, there's that charisma stat of getting new options in dialogue for quests, or sometimes finishing a whole boss fight without having to actually fight the boss. I know it can sound kind of silly. It's a little bit like that. And it's a case where even a little extra improvement in comfort speaking in a way that's understanding, in a way that's approachable, in a way that's coming from a place of humility, in a way that's vulnerable, can really be really helpful. Open a lot of doors, improve your ability to function on teams, and so on. This is something we see at all ranges too. It's something adults have challenges with. It's something I've seen professional designers and engineers and producers run into limitations on, of where I think they weren't getting promoted past a certain point because they hadn't yet tackled that the way they were speaking left some people feel like they either weren't respected or weren't able to take part in the conversation, or would just sort of zip up. And that's one of the things, one way we hurt ourselves too, quietly and silently and invisibly, when we come across as hostile and we don't mean to be, or like I say, abrasive is sometimes the other word we use for this, is it results in a lot of potentially really valuable feedback and suggestions and viewpoints never reaching us. Because people figure, it's not worth a fight today. It's not worth it. Just let them go about their way. Right? So anyway, that's it for today. I think it's a valuable thing for anybody to pay attention to in terms of how can we improve our comfort in speaking, and to frame it from the other side, the comfort of others who are speaking with us. Which again involves becoming more aware of our cues that we're giving, practicing, trying a few different ways of phrasing points, figuring out how we can come into a conversation not as though there's going to be a winner or loser, not as though we're trying to fight for our point, but really kind of entering it from how can we all get on the same page? How can we improve the perspective we all have in total in shared perspective? So that's it for today. Chris Deliano for GameKeto. Thank you for tuning in. Look forward to playing your games in the future. Bye-bye.